In this video, we are going to look at how do we connect different blocks together. So at the moment, as you can see, we have just a simple block, the starter block. So this input block, it's always going to be, by default, is going to be created. And it's a type of block that cannot be deleted. Even if you select it and press Ctrl Delete, it's not going to be able to be deleted because this is almost like the gateway into the workflow that you're going to build. This is almost the access point into the workflow. So how do we create a block? The way you create a block, just press the space bar and then type in type of block that we want to create. And that's going to automatically drop it in the canvas. To establish a connection between the two, we just hover over the output of one of the components that we want to connect. And then we connect that. And this is going to automatically now establish that connection between the two. Now, the way that I can delete this connection, I can just select it and press delete. And that's going to automatically then delete the connection. Now, as you can see, always when I'm connecting the connection here to another block, is going to automatically create here this kind of button that is showing that there is a relationship now between the input and the agent block. And this is quite important because when you work with this kind of graph-based logic, or like workflows, it's always important to know which parts of the graph can I access from which block. If I start to create multiple blocks here, you see right now we have two branches. We have one block here and it's splitting off into branches. So if I start to create additional blocks here, it's showing me that the specific condition block has access to the output of the input block and that has access to the output of the agent one block. And it will happen same if we keep on adding blocks, keep on adding different kind of elements in that graph. So it's just adding all the elements that we have in a graph. Now, something that I did and probably I didn't mention is when we create blocks, we have the option of manually creating the connection just by dropping in a block and then manually establishing the connection. So you can always do that. Or a more convenient way to do it will be to say, I want to connect another block to this router agent. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the component or the block that I want to create the connection to. And I'm going to press spacebar and then I'm going to select the block that I want to connect to. This you see automatically is going to create the connection. This is quite handy because as you've seen here, when I was building this, when I was keep on creating new blocks, you see I have that automatically getting the connection created. If I continue creating different kind of blocks, embeddings, they have a filter, you see what's happening here. Here at the embeddings, we have all these chips here at the top. And again, these are showing us that from this embedding component or block, we can have access to all the outputs of the input, of the agent, of the condition, evaluator. And because we are in the same graph branch, we can traverse in a way that graph branch and extract in a way from different kind of points in that graph, we can extract certain outputs. Now here, once we have more connections in the graph, you see right now, we are not seeing anymore the embeddings one. We don't see the embeddings one here as a connection. And the reason that is because we are collapsing that, as you can see here, the three dots, we are collapsing so that we always have just one row at the top there. If you click on the three dots, you'll see it's going to show now all the other connections that are not displayed here. This is just to keeping the things tidy and clean. You see right now we have quite a few blocks and imagine that you have them like that. Am I going to manually organize them and display them in a nice organized way? Or is there another way of doing it automatically? If you press Shift and L is the function of auto layout. So it's going to auto layout the organization of the blocks. Another aspect that is quite important here is if we have too many of these kind of connections, can perhaps partially hide some of those connections? And that's possible. You can simply just say, I'm going to click here, the input handle, and that's going to automatically hide that connection. And when you don't have it selected, it's going to show nothing. When I'm selecting the block, it's going to show a dashed line. If I want this to show again as a full connection, I just click again on the handle. This is something that we can do for all the handles. And like that, you have it hidden in case that you want to have a cleaner kind of workflow visually speaking. Now, what's important to know is that always data flows from left to right, similar with Grasshopper. So we always have then inputs on the left side and they're going to be triggered and pushed down the stream on the right side. One aspect that is quite important here to understand is that just because I am physically connecting input block to the agent block, it doesn't mean that agent block already receives the information from the input block. To be able to receive that information from the input block, we have to define the connection. And the reason why that is because each block outputs multiple variables and multiple types of outputs. And we have to be able to specify which is the type of output that I'm interested in using. So for example, here in agent, let's say that through the input block here, I'm going to send some images. So when I'm going to connect those images, I'll have to go in here in images and type in the @ symbol. And then it's going to give me here, which are the outputs that currently the input block has. You see right now, the input block only has file as input. So once I define that, I select it. And now I can say that there is a connection and there is a stream of data from the input to the agent. Without that being said, although your agent and your input block are connected, you're not going to stream data. And the same happens also with all these kind of blocks that we define in here. So if we go further down here, you'll see that what we are going to have is, let's go here to embeddings. And let's say that I want to set here something. So if I add, you see right now, we are going to have the entire list of outputs for all the blocks that are between this specific graph branch. And we are going to be able to access, if I want to say that I want to get the output of the evaluator agent 1, I can say here, although I'm not directly connected, but I'm in the same graph branch, I can say, okay, I want to extract from the evaluator agent 1, just the reasoning perhaps. And then I want to extract from a different one, a different kind of output. So this is the beauty of working with this graph base. And then also like having the option to select the outputs that I want to connect. You type in @ and then you select, let's say, conditional results or agents, the content of the agent. So I can establish this kind of connection now between different kind of blocks. So again, just because we are connecting from one output to the input, it doesn't mean automatically that the data is being streamed between the two blocks. You have to set also the actual output. You also have to be careful with the fact that here you see this is an input text field. So that means this is going to be able to read only text. If I'm bringing here an image, for sure, this is not going to be able to read that image out because the agent 1 image output, it's outputting an actual image. But if I want to say a text, so context, you see here we have string, any, number. So it's going to show you like the types that each block is outputting. So in that way, you can also know which is a proper connection and which not. This is pretty much showing just this kind of idea of blocks. How do we connect the blocks? Different types of connecting the blocks, be them by manually creating the connection or selecting and automatically creating the connection. And then how do we actually connect the data flow from one block to the other?